Well, good night, good night, good night to all of you. Oh, wow, you know what? It's been a while since I haven't felt this way. You know what? Like tired, very, very tired. And you know why I'm feeling this tired? It's because of this big, not budget that would have been dashed upon us. Let me say that dashed upon us, the ordinary Guyanese people, just a few days ago. You know, this budget, it did not bring about any kind of joy or excitement. You ask persons out there, no joy or excitement, and it's wearying you down. But I want to say good night, good night, good night to everyone. Thank you for always being here. I noticed we have Winston from East Penitence watching us, and we have Miss Booker here with us, and we have the the usual suspects, those from Switzerland, those from Paris, those from French Guiana, those from Barbados, Marcy, and the others from Barbados. Hey, good night, and big up to you. You know what? Just call up a friend. Call up a friend, call up a cousin, tell a friend, advance the call on. Because tonight we are going to be rocking with this boat. And you know what? Um, I know people get upset when advancing the cause is on, but that's okay. That's okay. The fact is that you are here watching us and you understand that we tell the truth and nothing else but the truth. And so, Yvonne Rodriguez, good night to you from Barbados. And Cheryl, good night to you. How you doing? You had a good day? What's happening? Talk to us. Look, good night to all of you. I know we're going to be streamlining here with all of our friends, all of our MPs and all of our other folks who would normally watch us. Good night to you, and we're going to be linking everyone so that all of us are on this page tonight, and we're going to be rocking this boat. Tonight, we plan to talk about education. You noticed the education budget this year, it is $135.5 billion for the education budget. And you know, when you hear these sums, you expect to see glowing things happening. But you know what? We usually hear about these big sums, and then we hear the stories of school burnt here, school burnt there, school burnt so. And you know what? These monies are spent on rebuilding schools that a certain group of people set out to burn. Just like they burnt the Brigdam police station, and you heard, oh, some young man by the name of Troy Green burnt the Brigdam police station because he had a lighter and some piece of sponge and some wire, and he lit the fire, and he threw the sponge out somewhere, and nobody saw when this piece of sponge went out. But the thing is, you know, it's like how he got this lighter into the lockups. That's the question that we need to have answered. Who was working the shift, and why did you allow him to go into the lockups with a lighter? But we hearing those answers. But again, education. Our focus is on education this evening, and we're going to have two young men who are going to join us to talk about what's happening in the education sector. Um, I don't know about you, but I know we've had lots of issues at schools. We've had loads and loads of monies last year. We had 3 supplementary budgets last year, and still we couldn't complete the work. You know, I hear about all these new schools that are going to be built. I hear about the schools that construction will continue. I've heard nothing being mentioned about the school at Bamia. The folks on that side, tell me what's happening there at Bamia. Nothing being mentioned about there. You didn't not even hear the minister talk about blackmailing the contractors who were contracted to do, who won the bid. Let me say that, not the contractors, who won the bid to, to construct that school there. You're not hearing anything about it, but I'm hearing the minister talking about all these new schools that they're building. And then I saw her in a post where she talked about the coalition should be ashamed. And the short man who presented the budget on Monday who's performing duties, who can't even put his signature on our currency. That man went off at a rate on Monday. I don't know if some of you were listening, but I know it really did not interest you, and that's why you did not listen. But what I want to say tonight is I'm hoping that the speaker is considering removing Parliament from the convention center and reverting Parliament to its original position, the Parliament of Guyana, the Parliament building of Guyana. I'm hoping that you're going to be doing that very soon, sir, because people don't have monies to spend to go to Liliendal. And you don't have any screens out there for persons to listen. As a matter of fact, what you have there are barricades to block persons. Now, if you're presenting such a good budget, then you should encourage persons to want to join on their television, on their laptops or on their phones to listen. In addition to that, you would want to encourage persons to come out to the site to listen to what the budget is saying for them. But you know very well that you don't have anything really to offer the ordinary man. And so you put up barricades there so they can't come. But our people, they understand what's happening. They know you don't really care about them. They know that this year, a bigger death burden is going to be placed on their shoulders and around their necks, which them, their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, their great-great-grandchildren, they would still have to be carrying the burden. Every time the PPP come around, let me tell you this, every time the PPP come around, it's more burden, plenty more deaths, more fires, more accidents, all the negative things you can think about. Whenever the PPP is around, we have that. And we've got to change that. And the only way to change that is by employing a new strategy to deal with them, and that is to vote them out. You notice they're doing a whole lot of things. They're doing plenty things they're doing, and they feel they could trick you. But look, we big, according to Melly Mel, we big and we got sense. So we will not be bought and led astray by all the foolishness that they're coming with. So tonight we are focusing on education. School reopened just a week and a half ago. School has reopened. And, you know, we've already had issues at schools. All the monies that education had last year, and we still have issues at schools. And you know what you're going to hear? Oh, we didn't budget for this and we didn't budget for this. But these issues have been plaguing us all the time. All the time, these issues have been plaguing us. St. Agnes Primary, sewage issue. So last week, the pupils there, they were sent home because sewage was flowing out of the toilet into the schoolyard. The children had to be sent home. They had to close the school. And this is not a new problem. This is an old problem that the PPP doesn't want to fix once and for all. What the PPP wants to do is to create employment every time for, I now learned today, the 4 Fs, not 3 Fs. We had 3 Fs before, but it's the 4 Fs now. The flattery, the families, the friends, and their favorites, the 4 Fs. And so this can't be no one Guyana. This is a part Guyana you're looking at. So the ordinary man is not there. The ordinary man is nowhere in all of what is happening. So that happened at St. Agnes. St. Gabriel's Nursery School, big promotion, big cutting of ribbon and so on, big fancy ceremony, you know? And that's one of the ways they get to steal the money too. When they have these big declaration of opening for the schools and cutting ribbon, and then they prepare how much snacks. They're going to prepare snacks for 500 persons, and there's only 300 persons coming. But the snacks are not being prepared for 500. The monies are paid for 500, but you don't get 500 snacks, when they know fully well that it's not 500 persons coming. So the ever old green, the brand new St. Gabriel's Primary, Nursery, sand dusty flooring, cheap stuff they're doing. Instead of putting maybe 3 sacks of cement to 1 sack of sand, and I'm just using this here loosely because I'm not versed in that area. They put 1 sack of cement. So the sand, the flooring is dusty. The children had itches, they're coughing, they're sneezing, this one, asthma acting up, allergies, all kinds of things happening to them. So when I highlighted that, they went very quickly to put vinole on the floor. If you see scotch tape all over the place, tape up, trying to put the vinole properly there. And when I visited that school, the downstairs of that school, half of the downstairs was completed with the vinole. I know apparently the vinole run out. And so this is saying to us that we are not using capable persons to do our work. Because if you went there and you measured the place, then when you go to make your purchase, you must know how much you purchase and you must not run out of vinole. So they ran out of vinole. And then guess what happened when they ran out of vinole? Half the downstairs of the school was not vinole. It was not covered. As we speak, it is still there. They ain't fix it yet. Auntie Priya, well, they tell me don't call she Auntie Priya. Don't dignify she would call her she Auntie Priya. Priya, fix it. You and your officers go get it fixed. You boast all the time. You brand new schools you talk about you're building, and you're building so-called schools to give people. You can't build a brand new school and the building is not completed. That can't be it. You check the furnishing of that school. You check the toilets at that school. They still got issues with toilets. Huh? If you see where they put the pipes, rather than putting the pipes for the toilets on the outside, the pipes are on the inside. So any child could jump up on a pipe, and next thing you know, the pipe break or the child slide down and injures him or herself. Priya, what nonsense y'all doing? Priya, you don't know anything about construction. Must get proper people to do this work. Don't come and do foolishness here. So we moved from that school. I think the operator has one there with Amelia's Ward Primary. And this is ever of old, you know? So when Priya rushed out there to talk about the coalition did not build any school in 5 years, Priya, I want you to know that the coalition had to take time to fix all of those schools that you people left there after 23 years. For 23 years, you people were there, and you left dilapidated schools, you left shells, you left all kinds of things. And if you want us to talk, let's talk about Cato. The coalition had to go there and redo the entire school. So don't go out there and talk foolishness. If you all had left proper schools, then the coalition would have built new schools. But we had to take time off to fix all of those schools. And don't talk about the multilateral schools. The multilateral schools were built by LFS Burnham under his stewardship. And when y'all came into government, y'all neglected all of those schools, including St. Sidwell's, which is situated just about a couple of just next door to where Coffee is. St. Sidwell's Primary is right there. That school has always been adopted by the president. And when y'all got into government, y'all neglected that school. So don't talk up about the coalition did not build schools. You see, we not like you. The coalition, not like you and your government, who seeks all the time to steal and cipher off the monies and give to your friends and your colleagues, and you get a cutback. We build proper buildings when we build them. And so if you look at the multilateral schools, they're not falling apart. They're not doing all kinds of things. You people are setting fire to them. Y'all setting fire to the multilateral schools. But we're going to go to the Amelia's Ward Primary School for you to see what is happening at Amelia's Ward Primary, and that school is in Region 10. So we had Amelia's Ward Primary in Region 10. We had Watuka Day Primary in Region 10. We had Mackenzie High School in Region 10. That dirty stairway that caused the teacher to slide and fractured both of her hands. Both of her hands from the shoulder, under the shoulder to the finger. She's having cast, both hands. You know, and then Priya want to talk about this and that and tell people all kinds of things. But while the operator is getting that done, we're going to bring on one of our guests in the meantime. He's here, and he's no stranger to these kinds of forum. We have joining us this evening to talk about education, you know, to talk about education and let you understand that the PPP are not interested in education. What they're interested in, they're not seriously interested in education. They're interested in quantity, not quality. That's what they're interested in. So we'll have Mr. Dennis Jaikaran joining us here this evening. Comrade Jaikaran, a pleasant good evening to you, and how are you?
Good evening, Miss Coretta, and good evening to our
Glad hearing you. So maybe
viewers.
to turn your
I
mic
am
on
happy to be on the
if I
pro.
not hearing.
The mic, then the mic on. The mic on. Hmm? Sorry about that, Miss Coretta. Are you hearing me now?
We're hearing you loud and clear.
Yes. I am happy to be on the program. So let me say good night to all our listeners, and I am happy to be part of this discussion. I was listening to you early on when the program commenced, and I was very pleased of some of the things you said. But I would have been following everything about education because I joined the education system in April of 1978. And I did not remain a classroom teacher. I ran through the ranks, so to speak.
Mhm,
And so I was a regional education officer, principal for two technical institute. I was coordinator of the Guyana School of Agriculture SQO branch. I was part-time lecturer of the Teachers Training College in Region 2. I give that background to say to you,
mhm,
whatever I'm going to say tonight
mhm,
is
mhm.
of essence and grounded. And I
Good.
want to start by making some reference to the reopening of school for the Easter term. And I speak particularly of what is happening in Region 2. I have had the opportunity of going across this region, going to the lakes and in the Pomeroon, both upper and lower Pomeroon. I would have had the opportunity of having discussions with not only the parents, but with head teachers and teachers. And because of the level of victimization and discrimination of this government, I shall not venture to call the names of any of our head teachers. They
Mhm, mhm.
remain our resource persons.
Uh-huh.
And so, what is happening? What is happening? They were not ready in no way or in no form for the reopening of school for the Easter term. And I say this to indicate to you that the schools I visited myself and from discussion and discourse with teachers and head teachers, I would have found out that the sanitary facilities in 80% of the schools in Region 2, they are all in a deplorable position. The
Mhm,
rehabilitation work done during the whole of last year to ensure that these schools are properly fixed. And because the award of contracts went, and the term we would use, friends, family, and favorites, you would have seen a level of substandard work. And so I want to believe that the work that would have been done last year to those same schools would be done this year also with the same bill of quantities for the same work to be done. And so we keep pouring in money to the infrastructure. We boast about billions of dollars in infrastructure, but we are not telling the people that whatever we get are of substandard and the value for money is not dear.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
Abramsville Secondary School, that whole project, and let me make it clear and straight. That whole project was birthed under the APNU AFC government while we were in office. And the final design of that school, and I can speak with authority, would have been done and completed while I was a serving regional executive officer in 2019 and 2020 in this region. So if any credit is due for the construction, design, and execution of work of Abramsville Secondary School, that credit is due to the APNU AFC government because we had a foresight of how is it we want to proceed with universal secondary education, not in region 2, but across this country.
Across this country.
And so that is our credit. But what is happening that I had discussion with some people, names are not to be mentioned because tomorrow they might have a letter saying that you are redesignated to another school for reasons best known to them. And so I understand that parts of the school, the infrastructure would have started to fall apart. The roof is leaking in some parts. They are finding serious problem with the electrical and plumbing work. They are finding serious problems with the sanitary facilities. And so some people are speaking out to these things and some people are not. But we believe when we pass there and we see this building looking as it is, from discussion, inspection, visit by other persons, they tell you the truth. And so we are not in a very good, sorry about it.
You know, Dennis, I was just going to cut you to say, the PPP believe in building buildings, tall buildings. We have no difficulty with construction of schools where we have no schools. We have no difficulty with that because if you check the APNU AFC's manifesto and the decade of development, you would have seen in that or in those documents where education would have been had the coalition been in office. But what we are seeing here is big fancy buildings being thrown up by the PPP government. But when you check the inside of these buildings, it leaves one to wonder whether the persons who painted the outside very nicely were the same persons who were part of the construction. And this is what the PPP believe in. They believe in flattering people. They believe in putting up nice, fancy, flattery talks. You know, Jagdio, them, they don't believe in educating people. They don't. Because let me tell you what, they boast about this goal and the goal scholarship and these programs under that goal scheme. But you know what? The goal is the goal. It is not even being used by the Teaching Service Commission. It's not even being recognized by the Teaching Service Commission. So all those teachers who went out there and did the program, they couldn't use that to score points for promotion because it's not being recognized. So again, we see the PPP, a whole lot of flattery. I don't know if the operators got this one. I want to show you this school, Amelia's Ward Primary School. After 3 years of the PPP being in office, we still got this school leaking. Last year, they had the problem. The year before, they had the same problem. This year, by the time school was ready to open, by the time school was reopened this year for the new school term, rainfall And that is what is happening there. And this is only the ground flat. The upper flat, the water is coming from the upper flat, and it's beating on the corridor on the upper flat, and it's coming through there. This is what the PPP believes in. And again, the PPP believes in a whole lot of flattery. They believe that they can fool people. Just the other day, we had the scandal with CPC, but we're going to talk more about that. I'll allow you to continue with Region 2.
Yeah, but let me say that I have a special interest because I worked in Region 10 for 8 years at the Technical Institute where I was the principal, and I'm in touch with the people there. Last night in my discussion with somebody in Linden, they said to me that the Bamia Primary School, the new school, is an old school that has not been completed. So I was thinking, a new school that is in an old school that has not yet been completed.
Mm-hmm,
And so
mm-hmm,
I said to him, I asked him, what is it you're telling me, dear? He said to me that the school started a long time ago. And as a
right.
result of that, it is an old school that has not yet been completed. That is the state of
and
education. New
and you
Silver
don't.
City Secondary, as soon
Mm-hmm,
as you jump into Wisma, New Silver City Secondary, the first secondary school that you would see when you get over to the Wisma Shore, is also faced with a deplorable situation where the sanitary facilities
mm-hmm,
and the electrical works are not in line with anything to have our children educated here. You go to the Linden Technical Institute, and I said I have an interest there because I served there for 8 years. The Linden Technical Institute is in a deplorable state, and they can't fix it. They have so denied all the children of the riverine areas and the hinterland areas in Region 8, in Region 10, parts of Region 4, to have the benefit of a dormitory facility. They have disallowed in very many ways and in different forms the construction and completion of a dormitory facility. And that was first proposed and approved while we were in government. As a matter of fact, while I served as a principal, I made the proposal for, based on the advice and instruction of then, of a very formed board, a board that comprised of very professional people. But we can't see that project through until this day. But I
Well,
turn to Region 2, and as it relates to our technical institute, the Essequibo Technical Institute, I also, sometimes it is not saying the things about me, but just to say I know because I was once there and I served as principal. They have a board, or they had a board, and I happen to represent the Guyana Teachers Union on that board. And I went to several meetings. Some meetings were aborted for the lack of quorum because people were not interested in the discussions that were taking place. It was more a two-man board, the chairman and the head of the Human Service Committee. And so they had a number of vacancies to be filled. And as the GTU rep, I went there and I asked a few questions. And the questions I asked, one would have been, were these vacancies advertised? The first answer was no by the chairman of the Human Resource Committee. The second question I asked, did the board seek permission to establish these new positions and to fill these vacancies. There was no answer because they didn't understand what I was asking, the question I was asking. It is a clear human resource question that I was asking about. And so they were not able to answer me that question. And so I asked them the question, do you have a spreadsheet? I know when you go to an interview that you have a spreadsheet, each person, so that you look at the spreadsheet, you know, this is John, his date of birth, his qualification, this is the position he's applying for, and then you score on your score sheet based on whether he has the requirements to fill the vacancy for the post he would have applied for. There would have been no broadsheet or spreadsheet to give that information. And I said to them, I'm very sorry that I'm seeking permission to leave this interview because you are not prepared for an interview. And they went ahead and they appointed their own
Okay.
persons. And lo and behold, the persons who were interviewed were selected persons because there was no advertisement, but people were told to apply for these
What position
positions.
to apply
They
for?
were not
Mhm.
adequately qualified, so that the institution now is at stake as it relates to highly qualified person to deliver a technical education curriculum. And
Well,
so that is it
yes,
we are
you know,
faced with in
it's
this
not
region and
happening.
in technical education.
It's not only happening in Region 2, and I want to say good night to the principal for the Technical Institute in Region 2. I know they're giving her a very, very hard time. And you and I know, and I think the viewers are bright enough to know why they're giving her a very hard time. But I want to congratulate her on being able to stand firm even while she is being given a fight down there, if you want to call it that. But we will continue to support the principal and every other lecturer at that school. As long as things are right, we will continue to uphold the values and the principles. But if the ministry, the Department of Education, and Central Ministry by extension is not going to do it right, then we will speak out against those issues. But I want to say these things are not only happening in Region 2, where you're picking and choosing. You forget just last year when they picked who they wanted to go to State House to talk to the president. You remember?
Exactly. Yes.
So the PPP, they don't want anybody to speak out against them. They don't want you to highlight anything that is wrong. All they want you to do is to say yes, 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 yes. And Dennis, if I don't know if you want to talk about it, but I'd be very happy if you can share with our viewers who are here the kind of fight down you had when Javier was president, and the kinds of ultimatums that he gave you and what he was attempting to do to you because you did not bow to them. And this is what the PPP is all about. They always feel that they are lords and gods over people and that you should be bowing to them at their beck and call, and you shouldn't question anything. As long as you stand up to question things, then they come out there to victimize you. And that is why quite a lot of our teachers are scared to speak out because they know the kind of victimization that will come their way.
Let me start. Let me start by saying they tried many things after 1992. I stood up to them. And I want to say thanks to the Guyana Teachers Union. The president then in 1992 would have been a man named Rupert Osborne. And the principal of the now Essequibo Technical Institute is headed by the daughter of
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
president of the union then, Rupert Osborne. But I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
come back to say to you what happened last week at the RDC meeting as it
Oh.
relates to her and her attendance there. So in 1997, they said to me that I should go to a function. And you know, in 1997, we had massive demonstration, the PNC,
Mm-hmm.
hundreds
Yes.
of thousands of people under the late
Mm-hmm.
Desmond Hoyt.
Mm-hmm.
And in some of those cases, I joined those marches in Georgetown. And so they were aware, and they listed me because I was one of the pallbearers at the funeral of the late Hugh Desmond Hoyt. All those things they raised, and I said to them, that is good. I like that. And so what they did in 1997, they opened a sub office at Charity. The late Minister of Education was Dr. Dale Bisnath. And I said to them that we have in our way of doing things, the party, a form of resistance because of what happened in the 1997 election. And so when it was time for him to speak, I refused bluntly. The only person to have received bluntly to stand up, I did not. And so the then chief education officer was Mr. Ed Caesar. And so he lodged a formal complaint to him. And so when he asked me the question, I said to him, I did what I did because I say to you, I do not honor man, I honor my God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the Reverend Dale Bisnath, the late Dale Bisnath, should have known better, he being a preacher. And so the situation started then. I was lucky because I was the most, I'm saying it bluntly now, I was the most qualified person
In the
to
region at
have
that
been
time.
interviewed for the first cadet course
Mm-hmm.
because I was the only person with a postgraduate qualification that would have been interviewed. And let me tell you about this interview because you asked me to say to them how the discrimination started. And I'm giving you this because other
Mm-hmm.
persons are going to face it, but they have
Yeah.
to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
So when it was time for me to be interviewed, the panel changed. And there came in the panel
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Dale Bisnath and the late permanent secretary, Pulandar Kanai, to
Oh.
interview me.
Oh.
And every question they asked, I was able to answer those questions.
Mm-hmm.
And my professional officers that were there, because in those days you had professional officers at the Central Ministry of Education. They did not commend me then because it would have looked bad after they commended me for the way in which I dealt with the questions. And it didn't stop there. You know, normally when there is graduation, the best graduating student would offer the valedictorian speech. And so this is what happened. And you can, the viewers can listen and be able to deal with it and to see. It was unanimous among all the cadets, among all the presenters, the mentors, including the late um, Dr. I am going to recall her name. She used to be permanent secretary then, not then, but before. And I was asked to do the speech, the valedictorian speech. But still, you didn't have a best graduating cadet. So how is it you ask me to do it? if in your own mind you didn't know that I was the best graduating cadet. I say this to indicate to you that that was a level of discrimination. And so I said to them, and I have it written down up to now until this day. At that graduation, the late Derek Bernard was there, and I offered to him my commendation because that cadet program would have been aborted while he was Minister of Education, but he did not get to bring it off. And so I give him the kudos for it, and people must know where the cadet course started, who conceived that cadet course. And because they had the opportunity of being in government and it is already written there, they could not have done anything but to bring the course off. They took some time, but they bring it off. And so I said that I believe strongly that based on the training we receive, that we should resist any form of discrimination and victimization. And I tell you here and now that that was a markdown for Dennis Jaikaran. And so what happened? They
So
said they
Dennis,
were doing rotation.
so Dennis, you ended up in a black book or a blue book?
I ended up in a colored book because based on the situation, I was in the blue and I was in the black. So they transferred me then as regional education officer to Region 3. This was the reason they give to me quietly, but I don't keep anything quiet. That because Region 3 is a bigger region, I should go. But I know the public service rules. I did go to Region 3 and I reported for duty. I ensured that my letter of assumption of duty was sent to the regional executive officer and the public service, not the public, the commission, the Public Service Commission. So I wasn't there. And so I started to make efforts to have things done differently. And I was away for 6 months. And you know public officers can be away from 6 months once they provide them with the necessary documentation of leave and what have you. And I was appointed, having made so many efforts, the principal of the Esquibo Technical Institute in May of the particular year. And so when I was appointed there, lo and behold, I was dismissed as regional education officer. I took them to court. I was away for 6 months. I won the case. I received all my money, and I received what is known as the, what you call the thing, I don't recall it, but I received, not the tax, you call it something there, as the court granted to me. And so they were not pleased with that, and they transferred me to Linden, thinking that I would have left the job in Linden. But what they didn't know, they sent me to my own backyard, where my own comrades would have been, and where I had a satisfying period of service during that time. And during a particular campaign and outreach, Brigadier David Granger visited that community as then opposition leader. And I was the principal of the Technical Institute. And I mobilized the people of Linden. And the auditorium was packed to capacity. And I invited him and I introduced him. And he said what he had to say then. The next morning, I was called to Georgetown to advise me that they are going to advise the board to dismiss me. That they did. And it didn't last for long because, again, I took them to court and I won the matter. Because I believe that the law firm that I have and I still hold to heart would have been the form that properly represented me and is still representing me. And that is why I hold it. I say these things to say to people that with the PPP, whenever they are in government, public officers, teachers, and head teachers have to be very strong. If you play a game and you are going up and down in this game, you do not know where you stand. And once you are not strong in the education system, they are going to take you for a ride. And so I turn my attention to what is happening now
And
because our head
just before you
teachers
just
and
before you go
teachers.
there, just before you go there, Dennis, let's just bring on Paul. Like we have Mr. Paul Court here, famous Guyanese, who is now residing outside of Guyana, all because the PPP does not see it fit to want to have him employed because of his political alignment. And this is what we talk about all the time. Paul, it's good to have you here with us where we are going to be discussing education. And I know that you're no stranger to this forum. You notice Paul is so dedicated that he's driving and he has decided to park to talk with us. Paul, welcome to another episode of Advancing the Cause. We have here with us too Mr. Dennis Jaikaran. I'm sure if you have not met him personally, you heard about Mr. Jaikaran, who served in many capacities in the education sector, as well as regional executive officer of Region Number 3 and 2.
Well, well, I have heard of Mr. Jaikaran and his travails with the PPP, but I've never met him. I'd love to meet him eventually someday. Um, the thing I'd like to see is that, when I listen to all these stories about the staggering level of spite,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
sometimes I wonder what makes anybody think that if for something so small, such malice could be meted out to a person, could you imagine them being any good for Guyana?
Well,
You know,
go ahead.
um, I'm when I listen to Mr. to Jaikaran speak, and he's talking about education, and he called Derek Bernard's name. That's my good friend. God rest his soul. We had many, many long conversations. You talk about the cadet corps that was already in motion, which couldn't be stopped. And I always remember the primary education program, primary education improvement program, and the secondary school reform program,
Project.
also, which was operationalized under the PPP, and people would imagine that it was the brainchild of the PPP when that was the work of Derek Bernard and the PNC. It started, and he never got to operationalize it while he was in office. You know, so I laugh at that, and then somebody sent me a screenshot of the Minister of Education's comical tirade about justifying not funding UG properly because of the gold program, and then they have Coursera and all kinds of thing. And I look at them and I laugh and I say, you know what? The man that is called the dictator, the wicked one, and is demonized, was not so wicked that when he came to office and met Jagan Night School, because that's what it was called, when he met Jagan Night School um, at Queen's College, was not so wicked that he would spite the entire nation when he realized the utility of Jagan's Night School providing skills and training to Guyanese. They'll talk about the University of Guyana being Dr. Jagan's brainchild, but what they do not say, because they're dishonest, is that the Turkine campus and the University of Guyana as we know it was brought to fruition by Burnham, who could have decided to kick it down because Jagan started it as a night school. But
Exactly so.
he was not so evil. He decided to build a campus and make it, to retool it and enhance it and make it bigger and better to benefit the entire nation, because Burnham was a man who was a man of ideas. And if Chetty had an idea that was good, Burnham just took it and made it better. He didn't decide to throw cold water on it because it's from his political opponent. And, there are so many aspects of this discussion that, as we would say in Guyanese parlance, when I think about it, it is post megal.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'll stop there in initial remarks and let Coretta lead and moderate the program as she would like. But thank you very much for the warm introduction. I'd only say that I'm not a famous Guyanese because famous people are rich. Uh, but thank you very, very much for your kind introduction.
But Paul, I want to say to you and
Yeah,
to our viewers that you are famous because you are committed to what you do. You're committed to country, and you were dedicated to what you did when you were here and you were in the school system. As a matter of fact, if the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture, if he had taken some of the teachings that you wanted to teach him, he would have been a better man today. He would have been able to pronounce words properly, and the big hype and so on, and the arrogance, it would not have been there. But we'll talk a little more about that. Dennis, we'll allow you to continue.
Yes, I'm saying I wanted to join Paul in addition to do the SSRP and the PIP program that we were able to bring on board. It was birthed and conceived by us, but they had the opportunity of doing it. But let me say to this thing, because I heard you, Miss Coretta, early on made mention of our multilateral schools. And I want to add the introduction of the community high school and what would have been the purpose
Yep.
of both the multilateral school and the community high school. So let us start with the multilateral school.
Um,
And that is why,
Brother Dennis,
yes, Kurt, you were
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but allow me just to say one thing before you get into that very large topic before I forget. Is that okay with you?
yes, that's okay, Kurt.
Okay, right. I'm looking at like I was mentioning the Minister of Education's post about Goal and Coursera, and I'm saying to myself, it seems like online education is a buzzword that seems to think that we could replace uh, the University of Guyana by just doing a whole bunch of online degrees, and you have the University of Guyana as a shell. And the thing that hurts me is that you will starve the University of Guyana and not make it able to run its programs, to send money to a mill in India, which is what that gold program is about. And you have whole bunch of people going through the mill, sending money out to the country, where if you were to fund the University of Guyana, the money stays and circulates in your local economy, right? So you're hurting the economy to send money to dubious institutions, um, for all kinds of short courses and training and whatever. And as if an online education could replace a good face-to-face education at the University of Guyana. And after the mill is done churning out these persons, I want to know whether or not they will be, because certification is one thing, but competence is another. Eh? I want to
Absolutely.
know if they would be competent, not just certified, competent, and whether or not we will see the value for money in the kind of improvement in the efficiency and efficacy or in the public service system after all these online mills put these people out. That's what I'm waiting to see. But
Well, Well, Paul, the thing is, if you put the monies into the University of Guyana, they can get drawbacks. But if you send the money out to India, then you get a drawback. And not only India, but other places where the other universities are there that they're looking at is big, big drawbacks past. And so, when the Minister of Education flirting up and she going on, she knows why she's behaving like that, because when you talk about sending out monies rather than pouring it into our university,
uh,
she knows that it's going to cut some of what she has to get.
and mind you, when you build it into the University of Guyana, it is lasting. It's not falling into a black hole, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
You're throwing money at a foreign entity that goes poof. Whereas if you develop the programs of the University of Guyana, it's here to stay. It's in your home, and it's being built in, or baked in. So there are several things wrong with the equation, but hey, sometimes I wonder what good is an education when you end up behaving and thinking as if you're sitting on your brain. In other words, your brain is where you sit upon is supposed to be, and you sit upon is where your brain's supposed to be.
But why
And that
I
is
would
why you
want us
sit
to
upon
spend
give.
while I would want us to spend some more time talking about the multilateral schools and so on, I really want us to talk about this budget, this big budget that we got landed upon us the other day. The amount of monies education is receiving, $135.2 billion, and you notice we're talking about infrastructure. Is everybody, you check all the ministries, infrastructural work, infrastructural work, infrastructural work. And then we're talking about textbooks. And Mr. Jaikaran, textbooks is where the skullduggery gonna pass, because you catered last year for the entire country's children, textbooks for them. This year again, you're catering for the same entire school's population for textbooks. So that's where the skullduggery is happening. We had the exercise book, and you notice all the wrong information on the exercise books, but we're still doing the same thing
Exercise book,
again.
exactly.
Now, we know that in our schools, we have textbooks, and those textbooks are supposed to be rotating. So from one grade, because the children are not allowed to carry the textbooks home, so grade one is going to use it, and then when they go up to grade two, they use the ones in grade two. But here again, we buy fresh new textbooks all over again. Let's talk about some of this skullduggery that's happening there.
Well, let me say that I'm sorry
Let me.
that I jumped in and killed Mr. Dennis's go at the
No,
multilateral
no, you go
school.
ahead, Court.
No, no, I'm saying you were
Uh-huh.
going to go there, and then this new point was introduced. My apologies, but you go ahead. I let you speak. Go ahead.
No, but before I come back to speak to the budget, let me quickly say
Mm,
that they would have defeated completely the purpose of what all our multilateral schools would have been established for. And if you
yes.
look at the structure of those schools, the physical structure of those schools, you would know exactly that it catered for both the academic and the skills training. And that was thrown through the window. And so the community high schools would have been introduced in such a way to allow for more persons to be able to develop the skills necessary
Mhm.
not only for the world of work, but to prepare them for our technical institutes. And so, if that would have been so, then And then you continue the program to fashion them in such a way based on situations like now we have the oil and gas, and we are saying the ministers and the president and all of them are saying that we don't have the skills is as a result of them failing the education system to be able to produce and provide the necessary skills, and taking into consideration that this level of development is coming, and therefore you have to prepare your technical institute and your technical education system to so suit what you need in the quantity and with the quality so required. And let me say this about the gold scholarship, and it is going to match with the money. $4 billion for the university, sorry, for the gold scholarship, and 4.1 for the University of Guyana. The University of Guyana is an accredited institution, and not only is the institution accredited, but all the faculties and courses that are dispensed with at the university are all accredited. And so let us go to the gold scholarship. None of those universities, none of those courses are accredited. And that is why the National Accreditation Council has to be able to do its work in a very professional way, and not to be able at a particular point of time to be able to be instructed politically to coin things to suit the level of accreditation when it does not match what is really accreditation. So you accredit first the institution, and then you accredit the courses to follow. And so out of that, you are going to be able to structure your curriculum, you are going to be able to train your cohorts, and you are going to be able to train those who deliver whichever program to the level in which to suit what you want out there. So when they talk about oil and gas, they are stifling the economy. They are stifling our people from getting the right type of education to go out there and to be able to fill those vacancies. And so I say, let me make that point as it relates to accreditation. And
All
very
right.
many people who are speaking do not understand
Go back to the comments.
what education accreditation is all about. And so that is why some people speak, and they speak not half truth, but in ignorance of what they don't know.
But let me say this very quickly. Our viewers, they're into this discussion, and I'm seeing one of our viewer, Gary Grinnett, saying Priya is on a hustle. She's people always say that she's a flat-foot hustler. She's getting rich quick or die trying. I notice Marcia is saying that they want Jagdio and Ali to look and listen to these programs and let them figure out whether they're doing right or whether they're doing wrong. Well, they think they're doing right. So even if we put them on this program, even if we put them right down here and they read all these comments, they'll still think that they're doing the correct thing. And then I notice in our conversations about the multilateral school, I noticed one of our viewer there, Mr. Ali saying the commissioner of police, he attended the multilateral school and he's telling us about 83 square miles. Guyana is 83 square miles. So, I am wondering whether some of these people are being blindsided by the kinds of activities that they get involved in. So it shuts their vision out, and so they say all kinds of wrong things. I remember when the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Clement Roy, had missed the size of Guyana. But that's another story that we're going to talk about. But I want our viewers to know too that Priya Manik Chan, Bharat Jagdio, Irfan Ali, the whole side of them, all of them, they were educated under the PNC. The same Burnham that they're trying to demonize was the person who allowed them to attend the University of Guyana free of cost. I want them to remember that, and I want our viewers to know that. Barrett Jagdeo he attended the multilateral school. I think it was Bijival Multilateral School or Bladenhall, whichever one of the two. He attended that multilateral school. And he was one of the persons who benefited on
The
the Burnham.
scholarship to Russia. The
God,
scholarship to Russia.
you know, and Burnham so bad,
And
eh?
not,
Burnham
not
is so bad.
yeah,
Go ahead.
and not only the scholarship to Russia. When he came back to Guyana, Hugh Desmond Hoyt was then the minister, the vice president, economic planning and finance. And there was the state planning secretariat on Camp Street and South Road, taking over that whole part there. And I was then the secretary of the Public Utilities Committee of the National Economic and Social Council. And so I had a part to do with that. And so when Jagdeo came back into this country, he worked with us at the then State Planning Secretariat. And he was employed when he was not getting work by the late Hugh Desmond Hoyt. So Jagdeo was still the people who employed him. It is not the PPP that employed Jagdeo. It was the PNC under Hugh Desmond Hoyt that employed him at the State Planning Secretariat when he came back from Russia.
And he was not victimized in any way. But now these wicked people are seeking to demonize and victimize the teachers when the teachers want to stand up to talk about what the conditions that they're working under. When the teachers want to talk about the 6.5, you know, just today I'm hearing that the regional education officer in Region 4, he was told not to release any information that pertains to education to the chairman of the education committee because the chairman is a APNU counselor. Could you imagine the level of these people? And I'm sure other officers are telling other senior officers within the Ministry of Education, they're telling their officers within the regions, don't release any information to anybody who's coming there as long as you're an APNU support, APNU, AFC supporter. Don't release any information to you. But I want them to know that no matter how much you tell people not to release the information, we will still get the information because our teachers are in the schools. And I'm not saying our teachers here, meaning the coalition teachers. Our teachers who are Guyanese citizens are in the schools. And when they are uncomfortable, they will speak. Even if it's a text message that they have to send you, they will speak out against the conditions that they have to work under. So don't play, you're going to victimize these teachers and feel that you're going to keep them quiet. Our teachers will speak out.
There's always a way around, even when dictators and demagogues are operating. People always find a way. The stricter the government, the wiser the population. Okay?
Exactly.
The thing I wanted to add about the destruction of the multilateral schools is that, you know, look, Burnham was a Guyana scholar. He was Queen's College educated and educated as a lawyer in Britain. But Burnham still understood that there was value for everybody. Yeah, Burnham famously said, although he went to QC and was a bright boy and big lawyer, Burnham said, there is honor in labor. So Burnham recognizes not only the brain people we need everybody to be useful citizens.
Yep.
And he turned around and he said, even if you're going to be a grave digger, just be a damn good grave digger. In other words, every citizen was put to work under Burnham. And because Burnham understood that you don't only need people to be using their head, as we would say in Guyana. You need the people's hands as well. Is why he diversified the curriculum. As a matter of fact, one of the things that Marvin Williams highlighted on his program recently, Nation Watch, was that when Burnham um, became prime minister, there were 70 schools built within 10 years. Schools where none existed. And, you know, the other thing is that before Burnham had gotten Agnes Rebecca Jones, whom I knew personally, to um, cater to early childhood education, Guyana didn't have nursery schools. The PNC implemented kindergarten education so that children started school sooner, because we know that early start, children who get an early start, a head start, usually do better. And, all kinds of revolutionary ideas. I mean, um, Burnham decided under the PNC that people had value, so that when you retire, we don't throw you in a corner. As long as you've had an outstanding track record as an educator, there was a contribution for you to make. And so NSERD was born, the National Center for Education Research Development, where
Mm,
all the veterans, all the retirees who did something sensible, like Florine Dalgetty, and others, were
mm,
able to go and pour their brain into developing curriculum, measurement and assessment, testing, etc., etc. So I mean, I don't think that Guyanese know the depth of the history of the contribution of the PNC building Guyana from scratch. And these are things that I intend, when I am less busy, to sit down and write about, because I think that these are things
mm,
that are forgotten. And he who forgets his history, this the you know
yeah.
the proverb was, a young man asked an old man, tell us about the Sumerian civilization. And the old man said, they forgot their history, so they died. So I'll stop for now, so I don't hog the time.
Let,
Yes, Dennis.
let me say to you,
Mhm.
Kurt, let me say this to you, that when these nursery schools were established and conceived, that geographical location as it relates to ethnicity was not taken into consideration. It was taken as a result of how and where we want to be able to allow our children all across this country to benefit from nursery education. And I think I should make this point about the nursery education, because we did not, Burnham did not, the founder leader did not put nursery schools in PNC areas alone.
That's true.
He put it wherever
Now,
Mhm,
I am
it was
happy.
pointed out based on the survey, because a survey was done. It was not a hopscotch thing, put in schools here, there, and everywhere. He did a survey to allow for us to be able to plant and to establish nursery schools with a proper nursery curriculum that would take them to the primary level. So that is going to be the starting point of where our education um, system would allow us to grow. And let me make this point before you go, Court. I am saying that we should erase completely the fact, or it is not a fact, the concept that Burnham banned flour in this country,
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm,
is not true.
mm-hmm.
He did not ban flour in this country. There was a problem, a difficulty. There was an economic situation with the PL 480 agreement, and it did not allow for us to be able to benefit
Yep.
from one or two or three shipments, maybe more, of the wheat that had to come to Guyana to be able to be processed into the flour. So let us erase that from the minds of those who throw it out there, because elections are coming up and they are going to use that to say to the people that
You
Burnham
know.
banned flour in this country. It is
Mm-hmm,
not true. It is a misconception. It had to do with an arrangement with the PL
mm-hmm.
480 agreement. And unless we understand that, then we are going to remove that stigma that Burnham was a devil.
Well, let me put a finer point on it because I forget the guy's name now, but he made he spoke about it because he was in Parliament at the time, I believe. An Indian guy, his name is escaping me, but I'm seeing the image of him going up to the microphone and speaking on that specific issue. And I watched the video as well. But he said what had happened with the PL 480, and it's important for Guyanese to understand, was that the US used to give the wheat to Guyana uh, on credit. In other words, they give you the raw wheat, which our milling company that makes the bolt flour, I don't know if even know if it's still they still make it, but it had to come down to the flour mill and be processed and ground and packaged and sold at our expense, and we gained nothing from it. And once the flour was made and sold, the funds had to be repatriated to the US. So we didn't gain anything from it.
Yes.
But they used to give it to us on credit and allow us to pay um, afterwards, after, and because we were the ones that broke the blockade against Cuba by sending food to Cuba when the US was
Yep.
deciding to starve Castro into submission.
The stuff.
They decided to punish Guyana
Yep.
by
Mm.
sending the shipment of flour, docking it outside the Demerara bar. And this is not just from the guy who spoke on the microphone. Somebody who was in Burnham's cabinet explained to me what happened because he was held in the office of the president overnight by Burnham. He called his cabinet. So it wasn't Burnham's decision. It wasn't a unilateral decision. It
Yes.
was the cabinet, the government that decided after a debate that lasted all night. Nobody went home that night. They were, and Burnham. So the point is that the PL 480, the US said, we're not going to give you the flour as we do on
On
credit, and then after it's sold, you send the money. You must pay for it up front
pay for it up front.
because
Yeah.
we had the balls to help Cuba. And Burnham said, okay, give me um 48 hours. And he called Indira Gandhi, his friend, again an Indian. He called Indira Gandhi
Mm-hmm.
and he said, could you advance us the money to pay for this flour? And Indira Gandhi said yes. The Bank of Baroda will will advance the money. And the US refused India's money. They said they don't want money from no coolie bank.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they refused the money from India that we couldn't get the flour.
Yep.
And so it is not boredom stopped the flour from coming. It's that the US spitefully decided not to give the arrangement that was in place for years. You give me, I mill it, and when I sell it, I give you the money
Yeah.
out of spite. So, and I mean, there are so many skewed stories like that that we could meander into all kinds of directions about how things are twisted. That it's something that is really troublesome, which is why more needs to be written. A lot of Guyana's 20th century history is dying with the politicians who were alive at that time because we have not written things down. They need to be written because the young people do not know.
So Court, let
We're
me let me give you
having,
the name, and then I'm going to send the clip with the person who spoke
Oh,
about
I
it
have
with
it.
every single
I
thing
have
you
it stored
explained
on
here.
my phone.
It was the late Sis Narain who made that.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
And so I'm going to send it to you to Miss Coretta so that you can, if you don't have your copy, I'm going to send it to her so that you can get it
Uh,
and we can share it widely so that people will
Yes.
better understand it.
Thank
Mhm.
you very kindly, sir.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm happy that we're having this kind of discussion, but you know what? Our time is running out, and more viewers are now joining the program. We're at 781. Um, and people just keep coming on and they're sharing the life. And I recognize Miss Diane Peters there, a former head teacher, who is saying good night, and she's happy that all of this information is coming out. Look, guys, we're gonna have to do this again next week. We're gonna have to focus on the budget and specifically on education. And I noticed one viewer is giving us the name there. He's saying Sis Narayan. But this
Since
here,
nine, yes.
quite a lot of our people, they don't know the history. And so when Barajagio come down the line and he tells them this and he tells them that, they believe, because Barajagio himself believes in keeping the people uneducated so you can feed them with whatever you want to feed them. And because it's coming from you, they believe. But Barajagio, like a viewer said there not too long, that Barajagio is a neomakaram in the true sense of the word. And you would know, and for those of our viewers who don't know what that means, it means somebody who's ungrateful. He is ungrateful to the PNC because the PNC educated him all through, and he got that free. But that's
But
another part of the story that we'll talk
but
about.
wait a minute.
Go ahead, Paul.
But wait a minute. I understand that they're bringing back dairy processing in Guyana. Where are they putting it? Not right where Burnham had the dairy processing plant.
And then you notice almost all of what Burnham had instituted there under the PNC followed through even after Burnham's death. The PPP are now buying it. And they are saying now, Burnham spoke about produce or perish, and now they're saying grow more food. Comrade Jaikara?
The global food that came about, and there's a booklet on that global food. Dr. Reed did write that booklet, and that booklet still exists, global food,
Now
right?
that is what I would
And
like
at
from
every
you.
Sunday, the copy, okay.
A
I'll
photocopy.
get that through the photocopy. I'll get that through Miss Coretta to you. And so
Yes.
every Sunday, you would know when this global food campaign came into effect. That the leader himself found his time and made the effort to go to marketplaces to distribute cassava sticks and potato slips and seeds and plants in an effort to allow people to not better understand what this global food project is all about, but to encourage them for their own good to be able to be small farmers, to sustain and to maintain themselves in a very kind and good way.
Now,
And again, Paul, just before you come in, again, the same Burnham that they're trying to demonize, and they said all sorts of things about him. Burnham was the man who recognized all the religious groups and gave them the liberty to enjoy all of their festivals. But yet the PPP would want to go out there to talk about Burnham is so wicked. Burnham is this, he's a dictator. Burnham wanted to punish people. And people like the present Minister of Education and the others would go out there to talk about. We remember the starvation that we went through and the lines you had to line up in to buy flour, and then they gave you rice flour, but they themselves now are promoting rice flour.
Well,
But if you
the thing
know,
I'm going
Miss
to
Coretta, not to cut you, if you
go ahead,
go
go
to
ahead.
the Guyana rice marketing shop or whatever you call it in Georgetown, they are selling their rice flour. You go into that shop and you are going to get it. The Guyana Marketing Corporation shop in Georgetown.
Yes.
And every time they have an outreach, like they're selling pork and chicken and beef and egg and all these sorts of things, when they come to the different regions or when they go to the different regions, the price there is far more than what the region people are selling it. And they bring rice flour to sell there also.
Well, let me say that I don't want to hear a word against Burnham. And the reason is simple. He was human, and like every other human being, he had faults.
Mhm.
But Burnham did more, exponentially more good than ill. As a matter of fact, um, you know, I lost my train of thought there. But to talk about, Coretta, you had touched on a point that they try to demonize Burnham. Listen, Burnham was for all of Guyana,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
Burnham took the coat of arms to heart. One people, one nation, one destiny. Because I remember teachers in the National School of Dance, whom I will not name, told me that they had a contingent going abroad to dance and showcase Guyanese culture and all that kind of thing. And when they sent the list, Burnham said, I don't see any Indian names on this list.
Mhm.
And they said, but comrade leader, Indian people do not send their children to the National School of Dance. Because, of course, they're all being discouraged from going to the cultural center because the Indian repatriation funds built that. And don't go there at the National School of Dance because, it's black people thing. Burnham
Mhm.
said, where are the Indians on this list? And they looked at Burnham stunned. Indians don't come to the National School of Dance. Burnham said, here, let me tell all you something.
Find them.
Put Indians in there. Find them and put them in there. They said,
Mhm.
but we are going out on this exposition. They can't learn the dances in time.
He
Bonham
said,
say, here what I say?
find them.
Find Indians and put them in there. So they literally had to go and beg Indian children, pull them in to try and come and learn a dance and send them overseas. Because Burnham, even though Indians didn't participate, Burnham would not have it that Guyana be represented as an Afrocentric nation when it has Indians. So don't tell me about Burnham and Burnham wicked and Burnham excluded Indians. And I think I said this on the last program you had, Coretta. The one thing I will say, because I can't let it pass, is Dr. Prasad, who is dead now, who was Region 4 Regional Health Officer. Dr. Prasad called me into his office and shut the door. He used to practice at Grove. And he said, let me tell you something. If it were not for Burnham, I would not have been a doctor today. He said, my father had plenty cattle at Cove and John. And because his father had plenty money from all the cows he had, he decided when he left Queen's College is to get in the family business of livestock rearing because it got money. And his father could not read or write. But his father went and cried to Burnham at Belfield, because you know where Coven John is in relation to Belfield. He said his
Mhm.
father went and
Belfield.
cried and tell Burnham how he spent all this money to send this boy to Queen's College, and this boy won't come out and chase cow. And he said, oh, comrade, help me do something. Say something. And Burnham, he said Burnham had him picked up by the Presidential Guard.
I'm guessing.
Hold one moment for me, please. Yes, thanks for holding. Burnham said Burnham had him arrested because Burnham meant for him to see the seriousness, right? Had the presidential guard arrest him, throw him in the government vehicle, and bring him up to Belfield. And he said, Burnham said, on such and such a date and such a time, you're to present yourself at Timeri, where your passport will be handed to you. You are going to Baghdad to study medicine. He said, Comrade, I am not going. He said, then is when Burnham gets serious and vexed and lean over into his face across the desk from him. He said, let me tell you something. He said, you don't present yourself and I will have you arrested and escorted by the presidential guard, put in your seat in the plane and handed your passport when you're in your seat. Do you understand me?
Hmm.
And he said, yes, comrade. Because he said Burnham talked like if he was going to bust his tail, as if he was his own child. And he said that when he sat on that plane, he said the tears rolling down his cheeks because he never thought of Baghdad, didn't know where Baghdad is, never knew anything but Baghdad. And Burnham sending him to Baghdad to study medicine. He said he cried like a baby. But he went to Baghdad, studied medicine, and came back and was a doctor. Burnham could have decided, look, as an Indian, let you go chase cow.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
so the person that they, which is why I believe that Burnham died prematurely for all the ingratitude that was meted out to Burnham. He must have been a most unhappy soul, and I think that Burnham was called home early because Guyana didn't deserve a man as good as Burnham. Me
Oh,
says so.
well, I really wanted us to talk budget, but we can't talk budget without talking Burnham. Um, and the fact that our viewers are enjoying what is happening here. Our viewership is at 1,093, and persons are saying they're enjoying this program. They want to have more of this. So next week, while we are going to start the first part of on the budget, I really want us to touch on this budget and the allocation for education. We will continue on the whole notion of LFS Burnham and what he instilled then in us. More, grow more, produce or perish, self-help, country first, not getting rich. And one thing I need to mention before we go, before I take our closing remarks, is that if you check in the Burnham's cabinet then, if you checked his ministers, many of them did not have a house of their own. Unlike the PPP ministers who, by the time they got 3 months or 4 months after becoming a minister, big mansions they putting up. Some people get they buy land in Pradoville 1 and they build house, and then they sell the one and buy in the Pradoville 2, and then they move to Windsor Castle and all them places and they building big mansions. That did not happen in the Burnham cabinet, which is saying to us that Burnham was about country and his ministers were about country. If you check what happened in 1992 when the PNC came out of government, you would understand that those ministers, many of them, they had to go and either rent a house or they went to live in some friend's house or some family's house before they could have actually been able to put up a house of their own. And that there is not skullduggery. That there is not scampishness. That is not flattery. That is commitment to country.
Well, let me tell you that Derek Bernard told me how much chicken he and his wife mine and sell and kill to be able to pay for his house. And let me say that back then, Guyanese loved Guyana. They did things out of love for country. And I will
Exactly,
give you an
exactly.
example. Derek Bernard told me when he became Minister of Education, there was a huge backlog of paperwork, right, in the Ministry of Education, records behind. And he said how he got people to work. He just told the education officers, look, on a voluntary basis from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night. We're going to stay back and try to update these records. And all they got for staying back was a Chinese food, a box food, and a drink, little liquor, and no extra money or anything. And he said those men came and stayed back and they banked the work. And at that time, Viola Burnham was junior minister of education under him. And so he said when he was reporting at cabinet about the progress of the work in the ministry, he got into trouble with Viola Burnham because she accused him of forming a committee without informing her. So he said, "Man, Viola, sit down and rest yourself. Shut your mouth." Because in his report, he said to the cabinet, thanks to the BF and RD committee, the backlog in the Ministry of Education has now been disposed of. And so she said, Minister, how could you form a subcommittee and not inform me? And I'm junior minister. He said, man, Viola, relax. You wouldn't want to know nothing about the committee because Viola Burnham was a came and went proper lady who went to Bishop's High School, you know. And so she said, he said, Viola, hold on now. The BF and RD committee is because I couldn't spell it out in the cabinet notes. It would have been indecent. It's the box food and rum drinking committee. That's what the BF and RD committee was. Them is who, he said, man, I just make the boys stay back, buy a Chinese food, and give them some liquor, and we knock out the work. So I'm saying people worked in extra for no reward because all the Chinese food giving you is cholesterol with all the oily rice, and the liquor destroying your liver, and they're doing it because of love of country. Nobody get house, nobody get kickback, nobody get the palm grease, nothing at all.
You know, before we bring in Mr. Jaikaran, unless what is happening now, every single thing the flatterers do is for a little kickback. And so we got some officers of the Central Ministry of Education who are receiving for performing, for acting in a capacity, they're getting as much as $100,000, some $80,000, and that's in addition to their salaries. Some 60,000, some 40,000. And this is what it's all about, the monies. But you know what? These same people have a difficulty paying the regular public servants, paying teachers, paying nurses, paying proper salaries to the policemen and the soldiers and the fire service and the prison service. But
My dear, I am sorry to interject because you are the moderator of this program. So excuse my bad behavior. But I just like you to know that there are persons who earn 2 million Guyana dollars a month for being like Popo in VS Naipal's on Miguel Street. All right? VS Naipal, the character Popo, had a workshop. And every day the machines would be going and noise being made and you're hearing, all the equipment working. But the workshop is closed and nobody knows what goes on in there. And so the little boy went and said, Mr. Popo, what you just be making every day in this workshop? And he said, boy, that is the thing. I'm making the thing without a name. So according to a certain relative of mine, is C and D. And so I asked him, what's C and D? He said, cock and do little. There are people who does cock and do little and getting $2 million a month. And I mean, I can't call name and I can't call exactly where it happens because my source would be blown.
I know. Mr. Jaikaran, we're going to take you and we'll close off because I know I have my colleague Sherrod who is going to be on, and I think he's already on, and we took some time from him. But let me put you on notice. Next week, we're on here again for more on advancing the cause with Mr. Dennis Jaikaran and Mr. Paul Cord, because we got to talk about music, Paul. We got to talk about music in the school.
Yes.
We got to talk about being able to play instruments in the school, like they're saying. And we have to talk some more on the education policy, Mr. Jaikaran. So we'll take Mr. Jaikaran.
Yeah. All right. In my closing remarks, I want to just say that I think it was Court who said early on that a squatter said that he went to multilateral school. But if you listen to the squatter very carefully, you know the squatter I'm talking about.
Yes. No name, no
The man that
warrant.
squats in the seat. The man that
No name,
squats
no
in the seat
warrant.
somewhere in Ivlery there, somewhere around there. I don't know, somewhere in Rabbit Walk. I don't know where. Somewhere around there.
Somewhere there.
That squatter did not say that he went to multilateral school. He said he went to multilateral school. Listen to
Oh,
him as he exhorted the 83 square miles to people. And
Oh,
so,
you
as I
went to
close, I
Monty.
want to say multilateral school he went to. Listen to him, this quarter. I just want to say that I'm happy to be on this program and I'm prepared to be next week so that we can speak budget and we
mm-hmm.
can speak about the
Education.
inefficiency of the budget as it relates to education, the discrepancies and the disrespect for education as it relates to where money would have been allocated. And I'm going to talk about the textbooks also
Yes,
next week.
yes.
But I want an opportunity, Court and Miss Coretta. I want an opportunity for about 2 hours on any program to
Mm-hmm.
be able to talk about an important thing in this country that brought us together, provided skills and opportunities, establishing in our interior communities and in the various communities across this region with profit and with skills, the Ghana National Service.
Yes.
I want to speak on that issue about 2 hours, and the viewers who are listening to me and those who host programs, I give them the opportunity to be able to invite me on a platform so that I can be able to speak not only on the issue of education, but
But
the
on the guy
values,
of the national service.
importance
Mm-hmm.
of national service in this country. So I want to
Well,
thank you very much, Ms. Coretta. Court, I want to thank you very much for being with me on this program. And I guess that we have done justice to our viewers. Thank you very much.
you really did. You really, really did. Kurt, we'll take a last word from you before we close off.
No. 5 minutes. Well, I wouldn't give my last word because I don't intend to die after I'm done.
No, 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 no. Let me take
Uh,
that. Your closing remarks.
yeah, my closing remarks. But I'd like to say that those of us who know what what should obtain in Guyana, because we haven't lost our institutional memory, people like the brother with whom I shared the stage, and I'd like to say to you, thank you very much for being so kind and so gracious and sharing the stage with me. It was my pleasure, and I look forward to hearing your contributions in the future. Because you have been in the game longer than I have, so I know there's a lot that I could learn from you. Coretta, thank you very much for this great honor as well, for being here. And I'd like to say that those of us who haven't lost their institutional memory need to not just tell the stories of the of the past, but also be able to influence policy so that we could guide the future. Having known of Guyana when Guyana, in spite of its economic problems, which were not of Guyana's doing, by the way, um, Guyana was the envy of the Caribbean. I would like to say that I lived in Trinidad for over a decade, and there were prominent lawyers uh, whom I spoke with, and I wouldn't name them, who would come up to me knowing that I'm Guyanese and say, "Boy, you from Guyana? Come." And this is no joke. Put me to sit down and say, "Tell me, what make all them Guyanese so bright?" And I say, "What? What are you talking about?" They say, "Listen, when I was at the University of the West Indies, and this is in the 70s, with Burnham's free education from nursery to university, we used to export skills. And they told me, listen, my teachers at university were Guyanese. They made me. And I want to know is what make them Guyanese so bright? What make all of them so bright? You know, and I was a little bit embarrassed because I said to myself, but Trinidadians got some bright people too, you know. But there was a time when Guyanese were respected, and we remember those times. We know what were the
Mhm.
conditions that made those great, which made excellence in Guyana. And those of us who haven't forgotten need to be given an opportunity to inject that back into the system. Thank you. Those are my closing remarks.
Well, young men, I want to thank you so much for being here with us on this program. I'm seeing Miss Diane Peters again commenting, and she's saying justice will have indeed been done to this program, and we need to have many more informative programs like these. Winston Henry is also saying the same thing, and I know for sure that the other viewers who were on this program with us here, 1,100 and something persons who were with us here, they really did enjoy the program. But viewers, I want to encourage you to start to join us early, because I know we picked up somewhere halfway when we were about 600, and then we started picking up. So I want to encourage you to join us early next week, where we are going to have more on education, but we're going to be focused mainly on the budget allocation for education and what are some of the sums that are highlighted there in those codes. What are the sums that are highlighted, and how we are seeing the monies are being the same issues are repeating themselves: furniture, building, textbooks. And we're going to talk about those next week, and we'll let you see exactly how the hustle is taking place, because the PPP is all about the hustle. But I want you to remember too that the PPP will come this year, and they will throw all sorts of things at you because they know that elections are nearing. But I want you to remind them that what you couldn't do in 2020 and what you couldn't do in 2021 and in 2023, and you're coming now to do in 2024, we are not going to fall for that. And in closing, I want to encourage you all. Operator, do we have that rally there? There's a rally on Saturday. We are going to be rallying against the high cost of living. Operator, could you play that ad for us, and then we'll close the show?
No more. I can't take it no more. It is time for all of Guyana to unite under one banner and rally against the high cost of living. It's tearing our families apart. Enough is enough. Come rally with the APNU plus AFC coalition at the Burnham Basketball Court, Middle and Carmichael Streets, Georgetown, on Saturday, January 20th, starting at 5 p.m. Come and hear the leader of the opposition, Aubrey C. Norton, Member of Parliament, as he addresses the nation. Come and hear the AFC leader, Kamraj Ramjatan, all the members of Parliament, members of the private sector, and members of civil society. Yes, Guyanese, it's time to send a message to the incompetent and corrupt PPP. It is time for the people to stand against the high cost of living. Saturday, January 20th at 5 p.m. at Burnham Court, Middle and Carmichael Streets, Georgetown. Come out and let your voices be heard. I can't take it no more. I can't take it no more. Come again, can't take it no more. I can't take it no more.
Right. So next this Saturday, we are going to be having that rally where we are rallying against the high cost of living. So when the PPP come and throw out this $1.whatever trillion budget, and the thing that could fool people, Guyanese people are not going to be fooled. You're going to learn, you're going to hear in detail what they have been doing to us all along. And so, Mr. Jaikaran, again, I want to thank you for making yourself available for us to talk about so much about Burnham, so much about education, but we have much more to talk about on education. And so next week, we are going to be doing that. Viewers, I want to thank you again. And I want to remind you to be very careful while you use the roadways, to be very careful at home because we're having lots and lots of fires. Be careful how you leave the children at home. Be careful with where you leave matches and other equipment, other utensils, as a matter of fact, or other materials within the home that can cause fire. Be careful. Let's continue to teach our boys and our girls to be respectful to each other. And let's continue to uphold what we have had a long, long time ago. Our national motto, which says, one people, one nation, one destiny. Thank you again. And we'll see you next week for another episode of Advancing the Cause. God bless you.